more and more entrepreneurs these days, we've learned how to use trance work and lucid dreaming to allow our bodies to rest, but our minds to explore the unconscious and the subconscious.
Hello again, my name is Raymond Chow from EO Malaysia, and I'm your host for EO APAC podcast series named Sustaining APAC. Join me as we listen to stories of EO members all across the Asia Pacific and their stories of how they're getting through these times, how they've gotten through many things before, how some of them are probably innovating in this world of crisis, and how we're simply just leading through it. Frantic times. Everything seems so important nowadays. Everything needs solving. Everything is urgent. Everything is important. But what is it that we really need to focus on? Today, we talk with my good friend, David Bartholomeuz, 12-year member of EO Adelaide, a self-started serial entrepreneur with multiple exits. And we want to get his insights as to what is happening today and what is he generally doing. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Ray. Thanks for asking me to join.
Thanks for joining us. First, Dave, could you maybe just introduce yourself a little bit to the listeners, for those of them that do not know you?
Absolutely. And for the many that do, I'm happy to talk about myself all day, as many know. But seriously, I just really wanted to explain, because I feel like my journey is quite different to a lot of entrepreneurs, in that my parents are retired school teachers that traveled all around the rural areas of outback Australia. So I spent most of my life growing up in mining towns in some of the remotest areas of the world. So it explains the poor fashion sense and the lack of social skills, and also potentially why I can often take a different slant on pain in the community and solutions to that. I think one of the big things for me growing up in that environment was growing up with Indigenous communities. So one of my brothers is an Aboriginal Australian, and I got to spend a lot of time living with him and exploring with him in the Indigenous culture here in Australia. And that taught me a lot about the value of being curious about what happens between when we go to sleep and when we wake up. People have potentially heard of the Indigenous Australians' dream time. For me, that is a real part of my life, and it's a huge part of my entrepreneurship and my creativity.
And you mentioned that you were self-started. So this sense of entrepreneurship when you were growing up, was that something throughout some experiences that you had with the Indigenous community, or was it just something that innately was living in you?
I think it's a combination of factors. First of all, I don't really consider myself an entrepreneur first. I really consider myself an explorer first. And that was something which was really fostered in Indigenous communities, but also just in rural communities in general, to feel like that you're at the edge of the physical world, but also very much in Indigenous cultures, or at least, the ones that I was exposed to, was this idea that there was this whole world to explore inside yourself. And that so many of the beautiful things out there in the world were expressions of beautiful things that were going on inside us. And so this willingness to spend a week just sitting and watching and doing things like that, which is not encouraged in modern society to just sit necessarily, but really being amongst communities where people were willing to take the time to do that and to sleep and to dream and to discuss that side of creativity and allow the inner workings of their unconscious mind to bring to bear genius during their day cycle.
So multiple companies throughout your entrepreneurial career, right? Multiple exits as well. When was your first business? Just to put it into context.
So my first business was during high school. And so that was just a little dinky business. But then when I went to university, I started a business called Microwave Monitoring Service, which was a door-to-door knocking business, asking people if their microwaves were leaking microwaves and then getting paid to check them. Very, very basic business, but it required $2 of startup capital. And it was a business that I was able to use to learn the foundations of sales and also customer service.
Wow. So going back to what you mentioned earlier, communities and sitting back and relax. I don't think we're in a time that a lot of entrepreneurs are sitting back and relaxing, right? What are your thoughts with regards to how do you relate what you just said to these current times?
It's a bit difficult for me to just say this or that, because for me, this has been a journey of really 30 years of exploring that inner space and finding what works for me. And probably the biggest preface on that is that most of my creative work these days is done whilst I'm asleep, or whilst my body is asleep. So for most people, when their body goes to sleep, their mind goes unconscious. But for me, and for actually more and more entrepreneurs these days, we've learned how to use trance work and lucid dreaming to allow our bodies to rest, but our minds to explore the unconscious and the subconscious. And so, for example, most people might want to meditate for 6 hours a day. That's not practical, because there's only, say, 8 useful hours in the day. But for me as a lucid dreamer, I can do that 6 hours of meditation whilst my body is asleep. And it's incredibly effective and efficient meditation. And so my wife, she's on the global governance team with EO, David Bartholomeuz. She gets so frustrated because she wakes up in the morning, and for her, the morning is this time where it's a new day and it's all these new possibilities. And she's got this guy next to her who has spent the whole night coming up with creative ideas to implement into her business and into mine as well. But this morning, she was just rolling her eyes because I'd come up with 4 completely different scenarios for implementation around the compression of podcasts and other media into the market, because everyone's all of a sudden releasing a podcast, and we acquire a lot of our customers through our podcast. And so I'd spent the whole night just exploring the collective subconscious for what is the future direction of the pain points of medical people that we serve.
So so carry on, sorry, Dave.
So I know that sounds very abstract, and it's very difficult for someone who hasn't gotten there to understand, but I just wanted to make that clear that the way that I operate is not a way that someone listening to this podcast could go, oh, I want to do that, and then in a week's time they're doing it. So this is more that this is my 3rd financial crisis, because I've been in business for quite a while. During the first financial crisis, I started seeing the use of some of these things, which then was able to show up in the GFC, or I'm not sure what they call that in other countries, but here we call it the global financial crisis. The one that came after the dot-com meltdown. And then between there and here, I've been further cultivating those skills, so that now I'm perfectly positioned to be able to bring to bear those internal skills, that ability to move into trance and that ability to remain immensely calm, but also to be immensely manic as well, but to be able to regulate and understand and chart my journey through fear and disappointment and frustration and rage as well.
Yeah. So I'm one of them that don't get it, right? When you said putting your body to sleep, but your mind is awake. Right? Is that in a state of sleep, or is that in a state of consciousness?
So it's in the very, very deepest state of sleep, called REM sleep. So during REM sleep, the creative part of my brain is switched on because I'm dreaming. And we all dream every night. Even if we don't remember those dreams, we all dream every night. And so when I start to dream, then there's just a tiny little flickering light in my conscious mind that's still there. And that part of my conscious mind can notice that I'm dreaming. And it allows me to observe and influence what's going on in that part of my brain whilst I'm asleep. But my body's completely paralyzed, the same as any normal sleeper. The only difference is I'm able to, first of all, and probably most importantly, observe the operation of my unconscious mind, which is where really 90% of brain activity goes on. And I'm also able to influence that. I'm able to make requests into the dream and say, what do doctors really want that they don't have? What's it like to be a doctor right now? I'm able to ask those questions into my subconscious, which just has 90% of the computational power of my brain. So of course it's going to come up with better and more creative solutions. Also, my conscious mind is switched off. So all of my preconceptions about what I already think doctors might want, that's all switched off.
Mm. Mm.
Are you able to pause? My wife has just returned with my children.
Sure.
Sorry, Ray.
No problem. I'll just put it back. Okay.
The other part of that flicker of awareness that's going on in my conscious mind is that, particularly over the last 5 years, that flicker of awareness has been able to show up during the day when I get activated by something, when I don't get what I want, when something doesn't go the way that I think it's going to go, when I feel that I'm in physical or emotional danger, when I'm feeling manic. That little flicker that creates awareness, that gives me access to my subconscious in the night, that remains a light during the day. And when I'm calm and zen and doing all that sort of stuff, that's there. But the moment I don't get what I want, then I lose that self-awareness. And the more that I practice this self-awareness at night, the more often it shows up during those key crucial conversations where I've been activated and I'm flying off the handle or I'm acting out. It doesn't necessarily allow me to save the day or sweep in like some sort of Zen master, but it allows me to be observant of how I'm being with other people at my worst. And that allows me to learn and grow, but also be compassionate for myself and others as well.
So my logic mind is thinking now, right? My logic mind is trying to process this. So how does that work? Do you then wake up, pull out a sketch pad or a notepad and start writing things down as you're thinking about it?
Yeah, let me take you into one of my walls. So I'm trying to map the collective subconscious of the entrepreneur, which to me, talking to lots of entrepreneurs from all over the world, it looks kind of like a werewolf, kind of like existence in my dreams. And so I'm not sure if you can see, but it's just one of the walls. So I'm just kind of mapping out on this huge big wall all of these different things about what I can see of the collective subconscious that's going on in relation to this kind of shadow dark archetype. So this is kind of like, I'm not sure if you can see. Yeah. It's kind of like the dark archetype. I know this is kind of like woo-woo stuff. Yeah. But the thing to keep in mind is that I'm a scientist. I'm a behavioral scientist. So this stuff is scientifically validated. Everything that I do is scientifically validated. So it's a phenomenal space to explore. And I'm so grateful to have woken up in the middle of an Indigenous Australian community that said, we've been dreaming for 50,000 years and anyone can dream. And the power of the dream is far more powerful than the power of the waking state. And to just have that seed of thought put into me as a child, then when I went to university and studied the operation of the brain and as brain science, and we were able to start to detect these sorts of things. For instance, when I was born, this idea of lucid dreaming, it was thought to be made up. It was not considered possible by science. Yeah. And then shortly after I was born, it was proven by science to be a measurable phenomenon, that it's real.
So it's
we only knew it was real because we were doing it, but it was very difficult to prove with science. Yeah. Now, because we've got so much cool instrumentation, we can not only map when someone's having a lucid dream, but if we take the correct measures from them, we can even tell from brain maps what they're dreaming about.
So it's true what they say, that dreams do come true. So really what you're dreaming is actually whatever that you're feeling inside, whatever your mind is trying to tell you, but you're able to put it in pictures in your brain, in your mind. And the only time that you can do it is when you're dreaming. Is that what you're trying to say? When you first start.
Yeah. But then, now that I know that I can do that when I'm asleep, I can also do that when I'm awake. Which is, that's taken much, much longer to get good at. And it's not something to do while you're driving a motor vehicle. And it's really interesting, there's a lot of EO members who are into psychedelics or into all these sorts of things. I'm able to generate very, very powerful and subtle states without necessarily the use of, mushrooms or any substances. Or also I do generate them using much more mild substances as well. So I can take, for instance, vitamin B6 is used correctly with the correct brain training can cause very, very deep awareness. That's vitamin B6, like it's Barocca.
Yeah.
And then I don't have a hangover, so I can operate. You know, some people might go on a mushroom trip. You know, they go on a 5-day and they fly somewhere and they do all that stuffing around, and they come back with one insight. With the correct routines sitting underneath, I can maybe have 10 of those insights every single night, and then just wake up the next morning and just do my normal day. So for me, it's not about it being better or worse. I believe it to be incredibly more efficient.
Yeah, so much better use of time.
Because I'm having to grow all the brain architecture, which it just takes time. You can't grow a new brain very quickly. So most people don't have the patience for it.
Yeah. I think some of us are just too urgent of getting things done. And we all know the concept of, yes, time is something we cannot take back. But I think we have to realize that time is there. Time is there for us to use. So however little or however much we use it, it's really up to us. It's our choice, right?
You just that just reminded me of something really important as well. It's important to me. That there's also this rush to feel like we're doing. And I see it more now than ever. You know, there's a whole lot of people there that, let's be frank, for a lot of us, our business as it stood, the whole business model is thrown in the bin. We have to start again.
Yeah.
So everyone's out running out and they're organizing Zoom meetings and they're doing a podcast and they're doing all of these things. It's activity, but activity that's detached from a deeper vision is just activity to make our ego feel calm so that we can sleep at night because we feel like we're doing something about this. And I know that this sounds harsh to say, but most of the doing that I see entrepreneurs, and this is not just EO, as I'm forever getting on group calls and training entrepreneurs, a lot of the doing is just distraction from the pain inside of, this is very unfair. My entire business model has been invalidated at a subconscious level. I know that. And also, none of the measures that I used to use to sleep at night are valid anymore. And so I'm having trouble resting and sleeping and feeling calm. And I don't like to feel agitated. I like to feel calm and secure. And so we go into these behaviors which make us feel secure because I'm doing something about this, but without the ability to go deeper and to really access, first of all, the pain, the true pain that is emerging from the people that we desire to serve. And then also going back inside and saying, what is the deeper innovation that I can bring that's true to me and something that's genuinely created from me that can be a genuine deep solution to the new pain which people are experiencing as a result of this newly emerging reality that we're seeing unfolding right in front of our eyes. Without that process, then most of the doing that most of us are doing isn't doing any good, except for to help us feel like we're doing something. But it's not getting us anywhere. It's not moving us forward. It's distraction behavior.
Yeah. Is it this sense of control that everyone's just suddenly lost? Right? Because most entrepreneurs, you call it ego, call it being in control, but we want to feel that we have the situation tight and under our control. And now it is not, because there's many things that the government is imposing on us, the health regulations are imposing on us, the pandemic is imposing on us.
So the world is changing.
Lots of sense. Yeah.
And it's not going to go back to how it was.
Correct.
There's
going to be a new norm, right?
Yeah. And this is every day. And entrepreneurs are better at this than most people. I was speaking yesterday and saying, if this is what it's like for us as entrepreneurs, who are people that are actually fairly good at change, what is it like for our staff? Because if they were good at change, they would probably just start their own thing. They wouldn't be working for us.
Yeah.
And so, and what about for a government worker? Someone who even requires that further level of security. These are terrifying times for most people. And so as an example of that, for me, I'm spending time during my dream when I realize that I'm dreaming. I just double, triple, quadruple check that I'm dreaming. There are things that I can do to check that. I need to really make sure. And then I just I say, I need an edge on the dream. And I find an edge on the dream. And then I just fall off the edge of the dream and just free fall in the dream. So my brain is hallucinating that I'm falling. And I just free fall. Wow. And because for me, that's what it feels like to be an entrepreneur right now. The whole economy is in free fall. And so we're in this waking nightmare of free fall. And we're all walking around smiling, going, my business is going great. I'm sleeping fine, and all these things. But I've got developed this capacity or this ability to address those fears head on in my dreams. Because we can't experience free fall safely unless you're a skydiver. You can't experience free fall safely during your waking time. But for me to spend an hour or two free falling at the night, it retrains my brain that free fall is not scary. Free fall is a phenomenon, it's experienceable, and it doesn't connect to death. And that's the problem for a lot of people, is that being in free fall, even though it's kind of figurative free fall, the market, is in free fall. And governments are injecting money into it to try and stop it being in free fall. But it's not even a parachute. And we as entrepreneurs know it. And it's deeply unsettling for us. And so for me, there's a huge piece of acceptance around that. It's driving all of the people around me crazy, because quite often I'm spending from 9 a.m. until 12 p.m. to 12 noon in exercise, meditation, and breathing, because it's taking me that long to be calm enough to show up as a creative leader in my business. And I'm pretty expert at this. So I don't envy the position of entrepreneurs who don't necessarily have the ability to do the sorts of things that I can do. It must be incredibly stressful.
Is that how you're dealing with the whole entrepreneurial mania that's going on? But I'm sure you're only human as well, right?
Only human?
Yeah.
I go to like 3 AA meetings a week. I'm a maniac. Like, give me a pill and I will get addicted to it. Like, this is like, yeah, it's like this addiction device sitting right there. It's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
I'm more manic and more depressive, and I'm a pinball bouncing all around. I'm worse than most. It's because I'm worse than most that I've really cleaved to these techniques, because for me, being able to move into a meditative state twice a day while I'm awake and to be able to meditate during my dreams is the difference between me like having a marriage and not, really. And having a life and not. When I didn't have this under control, I was not a good person. Like, I'm not a great person now, but relative to who I was 20 years ago, I was a mess, and I was just leaving destruction in my wake. And it was creating a really dark place inside me, and I had to resolve that. And so I guess coming from a space of disadvantage in that regard, being an addictive personality with a real chip on my shoulder, and and I still have those deep feelings of unworthiness even as an entrepreneur every day. But those things have forced me, or not forced me, but they've made it more beneficial for me to go and seek out these internal abilities and experiences that allow me to now, in these more challenging times, I get really frustrated because I see these headlines like unprecedented times and, these big, long, dramatic words.
Yeah.
And I just get so frustrated because I'm just like, no, we wake up to a new world every day. It's just more different now. And it's really, really nice when it's changing at a certain rate of change, because we set up as entrepreneurs systems and processes that allow us to accommodate that rate of change. We set up annual planning and quarterly planning and weekly meetings and daily huddles. And we set up the system which is designed to accommodate that rate of change. Now the rate of change has gone up by maybe 4 times or to 10 times. And so the systems and structures and processes which used to accommodate the rate of change, they don't accommodate the rate of change anymore.
Yep.
And so it's not that change has started happening or these are unprecedented times. There's a faster rate of change. That's all.
Yeah.
There is always change. It's just happening more quickly. And it's really noticeable for us as entrepreneurs because we don't have an entrepreneur sitting at the front of our business to filter this all out for us.
And I feel that, a lot of people are too focused on what's happening now.
Yeah.
You can blame it on the
It's up
media.
in the ocean. Nothing that's happening now is current in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah.
So why I'm spending 0 time thinking about any of this stuff.
Yeah. I have stopped reading the news. I stopped reading the news.
I never started because I knew that there was no point. I really didn't. There's no alerts on here because otherwise I'll get addicted to them anyway. But I just check in with my wife in the evening and say, did the government change any regulations here in South Australia today? That's it. That's all I'm interested in. Was anything? And she said, oh, they've changed this. I said, did they legislate that today or did they announce that today? Oh, they just announced it. They haven't legislated it. Well, then it's not a change. It's just politicians talking. And just there's no reason for me to engage in any of this because all of this is part of a change to a new stable state. What I'm dreaming about is what the world looks like in 6 to 18 months' time. When I'm going into the dream, I can talk to the dream and I can ask questions like, what will the pain points be for entrepreneurs in $10 to $50 million businesses in 2 years' time? I can ask that of my subconscious. And then everything that I've ever experienced in my whole life, and also stories related to me by other entrepreneurs. And this is why, for me, EO is such a bargain, because every story I hear from another entrepreneur goes into my subconscious, where it can affect all these questions that I ask. And the things that I wake up with are just, whoa. But none of it is to do with face masks or sanitizer or any of that stuff. Or in Australia, toilet paper. There's a big part of me that wants to create like a new supply chain for toilet paper. But also, I had to sit in the spa at the gym before they closed the gyms here. How dare they? I had to sit in the spa for 5 hours one morning into the afternoon. I had to sit there from 10 until 3 because my mind was going so manic about, I do a lot of quarterly planning for other EO members.
Yes.
I go out, I fly somewhere, between sort of 3 and 8 of them get together. Let's pay like a bulk price. And we all do this group collective subconscious sharing quarterly planning together. And it's super powerful for people. They come up usually, an individual group, one company will usually come up with about 50 ideas. Between them, they usually come up with sort of between 200 and 500 new ideas. And this is this interplay between businesses. They're not competing businesses and they're giving each other these ideas that you wouldn't get in a normal quarterly planning. And so, of course, with all of this stuff going on, because I do a lot of those deliveries by the internet. So I say, if you want me to fly into your city, it's $10,000 for the day. But if you want to do it over the internet so I can stay at home in my jocks, it's $5,000. And so a lot of them are delivered already this way. And so the manic part of me was saying, now is the time, Dave. You need to get onto, the profile, get the Facebook ads going and just hammer them out there. The ad price is going down because businesses are, and everything in my manic mind was saying, you need to go out now while people are vulnerable and you need to bring them into one of your businesses.
Yep.
And it took me 5 solid hours of deep meditation to not get to a new solution, just to shut my mind off from yelling at me about that.
That's probably the toughest
one
thing.
day. And then the next day it started up again, but it only took me 3 hours the next day to get out of that. Because this mania it's ridiculous. And I'm loath to say my mania is more or less than other people's. What I can say is I believe I'm very cognizant of that mania. I can feel it coming on. I can be with it while it's occurring, and then I can feel it subsiding more than most people. And it was scary for me because I hadn't felt mania like that since my wife, Sarah, had complications with the birth of our first child, and she had to go into intensive care and have surgery. And I hadn't felt mania like that since I was there holding this newborn baby and watching my wife get wheeled out into emergency surgery. Like, it was that level of activation. My brain believed that the world was ending at that time. And really over the last 3 weeks, this week I've started sort of coming out. The 2 weeks before that was really the peak. And then watching what was going on, because I was traveling through the world, really right up until they closed off the airports, and being in different parts of the world and watching that mania kind of sweep over the world, it really activated me. And so it really has taken the good part of a month for me to really see my body move into that full entrepreneurial mania, 2 weeks really peaking and just accepting that I'm a human being and that it's a necessary part of this transition for me and my mind to start to really embrace what the new world's going to look like. And then really the last 7 days, getting talked down off the ledge by my AA sponsor and by my EO senior leaders, people that I can message and just say, I've lost my mind, help me find my way back, and those sorts of things. And, without EO, I wouldn't have that in the entrepreneurial sense. I'd have it for the day-to-day, like stopping you, like breaking into cars and drinking alcohol and, cocaine and hookers and all that sort of stuff that, I was wont to do when I didn't have EO around me and didn't have those other support structures around me. But what EO allows me to do is when I share at an AA meeting, they're not entrepreneurs. They don't have, that same, for me, entrepreneurship is like an addiction. It's an addiction to helping other people.
Yeah.
And it's an addiction that I don't want to stop having. My ego loves it because it makes me feel like I'm like the king of the universe because I'm solving other people's pain. It's like, in a way, it's being like Christ in a lot of ways for me. It's like this sacrificial lamb picture of I give all of me so that other people can have life. And that's not true. But that's the ego game that I play with myself. And society encourages me to play that ego game as an entrepreneur because it does genuinely help them have a better life. And so it's this impossible situation that I've come to accept in that I want to be the savior, and society as wants us as entrepreneurs the same as it does for priests and for doctors and for other people. They elevate us and they celebrate us, and they, as entrepreneurs, they lavish us mostly with money. And, for doctors, it's more, lavished with this care and respect in society. And for priests, they get this sort of holy aura or adulation around them. But this is the thing that my ego will continue to crave, but it also does good for society. And so it's a really, it's a tightrope, a dangerous game that I play with my life, where I want to solve pain for other people, and I believe that that's my best life. But it's also, it's one step away from the madness of addiction and just staying up until 4 a.m. writing code or building, sales pipes or building prototypes. And that's the mania that I felt. And I sat in the spa for 5 hours just getting my mind to a point where I wasn't going to go off onto that tangent and then wake up 2 years later with this gigantic business that was just caused me to get a divorce, and I don't know my kids anymore. It's a really slippery slope. And so having lived that life, in my 20s and into my 30s, it's a place that I don't want to go back to. But at the same time, as I've accepted that this entrepreneurial addiction, this desire to help others, is not something that I want to lose either. I don't even think I could if I wanted to. I think it's so deeply embedded in my subconscious that I would always come back to this addiction, and that society will always be guiding you back there as well. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is. This is why you see pictures of werewolves. It really is this Jekyll and Hyde life where I'm just, as that entrepreneurial werewolf, I'm actually incredibly powerful. But also I can be unhandled and unmanaged. I'm a danger to myself and others. And so it's my responsibility to know, first of all, how to calm myself and how to be able to be in that manic form without being dangerous to myself and others, but still being able to move over into that manic place where I can be intensely creative and productive. But then also being able to calm myself, but also having, I call them my handlers, people that handle me. My wife tried to handle me two mornings ago. We got broken into and I just lost it. And it wasn't violent, it wasn't angry, it was just, I was just tunnel vision and I just wasn't taking her advice. And so then she knows that if that keeps going, then she calls in the other handlers and they come around me and they rein me in, put me in a cage and calm me down and give me the wolf's bane.
All right, Dave, thank you so much for your time today. I hope
it wasn't too woo-woo, but I just, this is me. This is how I create companies, how I create value in the world, and how I live. This is my life. So I have this day that goes for sort of 12 hours, about 13 hours my day goes for. And then I have this 11 hours where I'm resting and in a trance. And that feels like often between sort of 2 days and 3 weeks between every wake cycle. It's a very, very different life, I think, to most people.
You've definitely given me a different perspective of how to see things, really into looking into the future of what we need to do as an entrepreneur. One of my take homes from this conversation is really understanding or accepting that entrepreneurs, we are all a little bit of a different species. And we just have to start with accepting that. The minute we start accepting that, then we go to a different state where we have to understand that anything that we do for the future or even today has to be something that comes from inside, right? And for you, it's going into this dream state and finding it, absorbing what you see from the outside, and just bringing it all into ourselves and just having these dreams to be able to look inside and predict our future and predict what we're going to do. Right? So thank you so much again, Dave. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
One of my hopes as well for today, Ray, is that I've shared some stuff which is pretty off the wall, deep stuff, and a life that it's only my life. It's not a recommendation for anyone else. Like in Forum, I would never make a recommendation. This is just honest sharing of my life. I really believe that within EO, every time someone creates a vulnerable experience share of their actual life as it is, it gives permission for others to open up. And I know that by sharing this way, so many people have opened up to me, and to encourage people, if you do have, a bit of an off the wall or an out there existence, that for me, EO has been an incredibly safe space to share that. So I've got, I think, 20 people coming on a call with me next week just because they're interested to know more about lucid dreaming. And it's just wonderful that people feel that they can share, because I'll share things in that meeting about the nature of my dreams, which is incredibly personal, and it's not for public consumption. For me to be able to share that to other EO members is deeply emancipating for me, but also to be able to share the depth of my experience with them, I hope is something that they could only get through EO because of the trust framework. It's not really available anywhere else.
Okay. Thanks so much, Dave.
Thank you, Ray.
That's it for today's episode. Join me for the next one. Do subscribe. I think you've got a lot of value. I did. And share this with all your EO peers so that it could benefit them as well. Just remember, have a great EO APAC day, and we are all in this together. Thank you.